Hello and welcome to another episode of the Classical Republican. Today we have the speech by Sir Robert Walpole. It's just an excerpt from his 1734 speech on the repeal of the Septennial Bill. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Walpole. He lived from 1676 to 1745. He was of the Whig Party. The Whig Party was kind of the opposition until they actually came to a majority and had power in Parliament. He is considered the first de facto Prime Minister and he sat in Parliament for 40 years. So this is concerning the Septennial Bill, which about 15-20 years earlier, Parliament changed their terms from 3 years to 7 years in the Septennial Bill. Now, the argument for 3 years was that they needed it short enough so that the king would be forced to... The idea was that 3 years would force the king to bring back Parliament. Because if they allowed him to fund a war or anything else, any other sort of government operation, if they gave him the money he wanted, they wanted all those bills to expire in 3 years. So most laws at that time expired at 3 years, and so the king would be forced to call back Parliament. So by the 1700s, you had had the English Civil War, you had had the Glorious Revolution, and England was starting to look more republican. They still had a monarch, but due to the Glorious Revolution, the monarch was going to defer to Parliament, thanks to King William of Orange. So in the early 1700s, they extended it. They extended the parliamentarian's term to 7 years, and this allowed them to really get things done, to hammer things out. Well, at least that was the whole rationale behind it. So, about 15 years later, 1734, we have a debate to repeal the Septenial Act and to make their terms shorter again. So in this speech, he reflects on the fact that Great Britain is a mixed regime with a monarchy in the King George at this time, an aristocracy in the House of Lords, and a democracy in the House of Commons. Usually it's summed up as King, Lords, and Commons. So I'm not going to read the whole speech, but I'm just going to read an excerpt. If you're following along in your Hansard, which is the record of the House of Commons, it's on page 473. Now, this is the repeal of the Septennial Act, 1734, and I've skipped the exordium, the divisio, and now I'm getting into the first confirmatio. It is certain that ours is a mixed government, and the perfection of our constitution consists in this, that the monarchical, aristocratical, and democratical forms of government are mixed and interwoven in ours, so as to give all the advantages of each, without subjecting us to the dangers and inconveniencies of either. The democratical form of government, which is the only one I have now occasion to take notice of, is liable to these inconveniences, that they are generally too tedious in their coming to any resolution, and seldom brisk and expeditious enough in carrying their resolutions into execution, that they are always wavering in their resolutions and never steady in any of the measures they resolve to pursue, and that they are often involved in factions, seditions, and insurrections, which exposes them to be made of tools, if not the prey of their neighbors. Therefore, in all the regulations we make with respect to our Constitution, we are to guard against running too much into that form of government which is properly called democratical. This was, in my opinion, the effect of the Triennial Law, and will again be the effect if ever it should be restored. Okay, so that's the end. Well, that's not the end of his speech, but that's the end of my quote. And so the repeal was rejected, and it went on for, the 7-year term went on for I think another century. And so we see that Walpole saw his government, his Constitution of Great Britain, as a mixed regime. So long live the Republic.